What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Thursday, January 9th, 2024. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host, Phil, for episode 324. Phil, the TV is back. It's bigger. It's less clear. Improvements are being made. Like I said from the get-go, moving in here, it's going to take some time. But we're slowly getting back to what we were pre-move and pre-packing of the house. So slow steps forward, I should say. Slow. Moving forward.
You had a banner raising in the new house. So.
We did. Yeah, that is something we didn't do at the old house. So
No.
Progress slowly being made. Question for you. Have you ever tweaked like a muscle or pinched a nerve or something in your neck?
Yes.
I'm dealing with that right now. Like, I don't know what I did at work. I went from the truck to the office, sat down in the chair, and went, my neck's hurting. It now I can't lift my head past there. Like,
That's such an old man injury.
Yeah.
Like, you literally did nothing at all except sit down in a chair, and you're like, my neck.
Yeah, it hurts. It definitely hurts. And we're gonna try to power through this.
The worst one I ever had. It's pretty much the only like neck injury I think I've ever had, and I didn't tell anyone about it. Probably should have, but we're alive. We were watching a soccer game at my high school. It might have been my brother, I think, and a few of us went out to like play at halftime. While the field was empty, we just went out to shoot around. It might have been even like a JV game or something that varsity was forced to go watch. Something was going on, and it was raining, and I had shoes on, not spikes, and I decided to try a bicycle kick. Not smart, landed completely on my shoulders, neck, and head, and I was okay, got up fine, but then, like, for 2 weeks, I would have these huge neck spasms where I literally had to, like, crunch my shoulders to my head, and it was like a involuntary reaction and movement. Like, I didn't want to do it, but it was like, like it just like froze up, and it lasted a good 2 to 3 weeks. It was brutal. Probably should have told someone, but I was like, no, I'm good. And eventually shook it off and recovered. So here we are.
Yeah, I think my worst injury was probably when we went sledding. We have that whole reel that's still out there on TikTok.
Another old man injury.
Yeah, that one definitely hurt. I wish we had video of it. We just have the pictures, which do it justice. But go check out our TikTok, which BuffaloSportsCollective.com. Well, not even .com. Check that part. Just Buffalo Sports Collective. It's one of the most popular ones out there, along with the toaster strudels one. Anytime I upload a new TikTok, I have to wait for it to like upload, so it just like scans through like our most popular ones. So it's like it's the toaster strudels, it's the Gabe Davis, the what was it 2 years ago, the least improved or whatever it was, and we were like, you don't want to be on this list 1 year in a row. We had the sledding one, we had the UPL versus Miller one that you made, the difference between the two goals. Yeah, all the big highlight ones are always on there. So maybe this conversation will pop up there next. Who knows? Our banner raising one just got uploaded the other day, Tuesday I think it was. So that's making its rounds on TikTok. So it's making its rounds on all these social media platforms, which is Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube. You can see the beautiful TV behind me, the banner, their flags. You can check last 2 weeks ago. Yeah. 2 Fridays ago. Whenever it was. Watch all the YouTube videos, and you can watch the banner raising on there. You can see our wonderful faces rather than just hear our beautiful voices. Check out our website at BuffaloSportsCollective.com. Phil's article will be uploaded next Tuesday after the Bills play, or Bandits play. God, my neck is really bothering me. Apparently, it's going right to my brain. And my power rankings will be out on Friday, week 7. Didn't have one last week. Sorry. Was really, really sick. But week 7's will be up on Friday. You can check them out there. Check out our store on our link tree and our social media sites, or at the top of the website by just hitting the shop tab. You can represent the BSC on the go and look for time breakdowns in the description of the show. First one, Bills versus Broncos. And we're going to be doing this every Thursday/Friday. I think the rest of them are going to be Fridays before the game. This was Phil's idea because we don't preview the games, but let's give a little bit more insight on why we think the Bills would win. So, Phil, I don't know if you want me to go first. You can go first, but the question will be asked every pre-show before the Bills game. If the Bills do win that game, and for this one it is on Sunday, this player will have played a major role in their victory. Would you like me to give my name first, or you want to shoot out yours first?
No, you can go.
I will go. I love this idea. I originally was just going to do like confidence meter 1 to 10. This one's far more creative and original and longer lasting than my idea. I'm going Greg Rousseau, and it's for a very simple reason of need to get pressure on this young quarterback. I think I saw a stat that Sean McDermott's like 11-3 or 11-5 or something like that against rookie quarterbacks in regular season and in playoffs, and they're like 10 touchdowns for 21 interceptions, and a lot of that is getting pressure on the young quarterback and kind of rattling him. And he's an older rookie, but he's still a rookie coming into his first playoff road game at that. Now, he can run, and he can run very well, and they need to keep him contained to the pocket. It's going to be very interesting if they use more of a spy. Maybe they use Matt Milano or Terrell Bernard more as a spy role for Bo Nix. Mims, he's going to be a gadget guy. McLaughlin seems to be the hot hand in the running back room right now. Sutton's really their go-to guy and one of the only wide receivers they really have that is a skilled position type wide receiver. But containing Bo Nix on third downs is going to be key. They need to get off the field on third down. The way you lose this game is if you let Denver extend drives. If you get them to third and longs and you just can't get them off the field, you're in for a very long night. We've seen that hurt the Buffalo Bills defense in the past this year. They've had a difficult time getting off the field on third down, and Bo Nix is one of the best running quarterbacks on picking up third downs in the league this year, even at a rookie. So I think along with the whole defensive line, but especially Gregory Rousseau, they need to get to him early, and they need to keep him within the pocket. Do not let him escape. Make sure you seal your edges, and if he's running and picking up those third downs, we're in for a very long night, because Denver, while they might have been the 7th seed in the AFC, they have some good wins on their resume, and Bo Nix has been balling out the last since week 5, week 6 on. He's been very, very, very solid.
Yeah, I think getting to him early, like we say with literally everything pretty much in sports, it seems, getting a lead early, getting the sacks early. I do think getting into him early, throwing him off his game, the longer the game goes on and the more you don't get to him and the more his confidence goes up as a rookie in a hostile environment for a playoff game, that is not good. If you can throw him off really early, force a turnover, get a couple sacks, throw him off his game, get the crowd in his head, get the playoff atmosphere in his head, I think that's where you're going to be able to really win this game early on. But the longer he goes and the more confidence he gets throughout the game, if you are not getting to him, pressuring him, if you, like you said, if he can't escape on third down, second downs, if he's just running around scrambling like it's no problem, that's where he's going to be a big problem. I have a player and a team, I guess, stat-ish. So my player is Tyler Bass. I think this game could be close. I think there's a very big opportunity for it to be a close game. Both teams are pretty solid. One's good at defense, one's better at offense, one's a little worse at offense, one's a little worse at defense. So I do think it could end up being a close game. Bass finished the season with 82.8%, and realistically, how many times we talked about it, the Bills didn't need him all that often to come up in big situations. A lot of the games were blowouts, the ones they did win, so they didn't need him too often in high-pressure situations. They did occasionally. I believe his season long of 61 was on a high-pressure kick. But he only kicked 29 times the whole year. As far as field goals go, he only made 24. Really wasn't needed too much throughout the season, but he could end up needing as many points as he can get and not missing pretty much anything in a game like this where all points are going to be crucial. So I think he needs to have a big performance. The other one I'm kind of worried about, and should go in the Bills' favor, but I think it needs to, is the turnover battle. The Bills ended up number one in the league, plus 24. Next highest was 16th, and the Broncos ended up plus 6. So both teams are pretty good at turning it over, but the Bills obviously very high in their turnover differential. But the Broncos led the entire league in sacks with 63. Next highest was 54. So their defense, if they have the ability to get to Josh and throw him off his game and throw an interception or two, if the offense is struggling at all against a very good defense, the Bills' defense that has been struggling is going to need to step up in a huge way. And I think a big way is going to be winning that turnover battle. However it happens, whether it's Josh throws one, they throw three, fumbles, whatever. I think the turnover battle is going to be huge in a game like this. And it's something that the defense can do without looking amazing, but they can still do that to help their offense and get them back on the field, get them in good situations. So I think the turnover battle is going to be big, and I think Tyler Bass is going to have to be real spot on.
Yeah, I still remember the whole offseason. We were talking about how we thought this team was going to be in a lot of close battles, and Tyler Bass was going to be a very important part of this team. And we were wrong for good reasons because the offense just was lighting up. But I also agree with the turnover battle. If Bo Nix doesn't throw a ton of interceptions, but if you can bait him into those type of issues versus I wouldn't call them a veteran defense, but they've known the scheme for a while now. I mean, none of them are really new to the system. I mean, they played all year in it. The biggest concern I have is still the rushing ability on third down for the team, and but especially just picking up third and longs. If you continue to let Denver pick up those third and longs all game long, they're going to tire out your defense, and it's going to keep your offense on the sidelines longer. In a two seed versus a 7 seed, you don't want to let the 7 seed hang around, and letting them pick up third and longs. That to me is the biggest key of the game. If you can get them off the field on those third downs, and you do not let them pick those long ones up, you got a very good shot at winning this game. But we'll move forward because the rest of the league that made the playoffs is playing this week. Phil, how we're going to do this, you're going to pick the winners of the 6 games this weekend. Then you're going to pick your AFC and NFC matchups. Who are going to make it for the AFC, who's going to make it for the NFC, and then you're going to pick your Super Bowl matchup and winner. So winners this week, Chargers versus Texans, first game on Saturday. Who you got?
I have the Chargers.
I am following that as well. I also have the Chargers with what you would consider as an upset because the Texans are the higher seed. It's in Houston, but to me, I just think the Chargers are a better team right now. I think the Texans were that nice story from last year that carried over to this year. I don't think C.J. Stroud has been the same quarterback he was last year, and I think the Chargers are just better coached, and I think their style is going to dominate a more beat-up Texans team. So next one, Ravens versus Steelers. If the Ravens win and the Bills win, that is going to be your second round matchup. But Ravens versus Steelers, who you got?
Yeah, I think the Ravens will blow out the Steelers. As you predicted correctly, Steelers are coming into the playoffs 0 of their last 4, limping in, not limping well. The Ravens are flying high. Really shouldn't be too big a one for the Ravens.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a super big blowout, but I do have the Ravens winning probably by 10, 14 points. I think it's going to be a closer
That's
one
big
because they
enough for
are
playoffs.
division rivals, but
Yeah.
I can't live in a world where the Steelers make it to the second round of the playoffs. I can't do it. I can't stomach that. I know I still wouldn't, even if they somehow upset the Ravens, they're not making it to the AFC Championship, let alone a Super Bowl. So my bet with Mike Tomlin never winning a Super Bowl is going to continue. The next one, 3 AFC games right in a row, 1 o'clock Sunday, Bills versus Broncos. Can we both assume that we will be leaving and recording Sunday night happy people?
I sure as heck hope so. I do have the Bills over the Broncos.
Same. I actually, this one, for as much as I was worried about and everything we've talked about with the matchup, I think this one's going to be more of a blowout. I see Buffalo winning by 20, 25 points, something along those lines. Yeah, it's maybe it's a hot take. Maybe you can consider that one a hot take. Eagles versus Packers right after first NFC game on the slate. Phil, who is moving on to the divisional round?
Yeah, the Eagles, this is another, honestly, to me, at this point, with the Packers' injuries, this seems more like a Ravens and Steelers kind of game. I think the Eagles are playing really, really good football. I don't think the Packers are going to be able to do much as their whole team is pretty much decimated and injured.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a big Saquon Barkley game. I got Eagles, so we're running 4 for 4 right now. Commanders versus Bucks. Who is moving on?
This one could be a little interesting. It depends on both teams who shows up. I mean, you got a rookie QB, same situation as the Bills, but he's looked really, really good, and he comes on strong and in clutch situations when he needs to, so it doesn't seem like the pressure really gets to him all that much. But Mayfield and the Bucks and a lot of those players like Evans, they've been there before, they've done it before, so we'll see. I think if both teams show up and play their best, I could see the Bucks upsetting, but I do think it'll be the Commanders.
We're running 5 for 5. I think this is definitely going to be.
Yeah.
I think this one's going to be the most competitive game, and I think this is going to be the one that everybody's going to want to watch. So, I'm such a big Jaden Daniels fan. I don't think there's enough talent around him, but I just think with the way he's playing and the way they're coached right now under Dan Quinn, I'm leaning with the Commanders right now. Rams versus Vikings, the 4-5 matchup in the NFC here on Monday night. Who you got moving on?
Yeah, same thing. I do think this is going to be one of the arguably most exciting. I think Bills Broncos could be, not by your prediction. Commanders Bucks and then Rams Vikings are probably going to be the big exciting games that could go. I mean, I don't want to say the Bills Broncos could go either way, because if the Bills show up like they know how to show up, I think it'll be fine. But Commanders Bucks, Rams Vikings, I could see both of those going either way depending on how the teams react. To me, it's wild to say, pretty crazy, but I think the Rams are the more complete team right now, and I think their quarterback is just better in these situations. We saw, no offense to him, but we saw Darnold kind of crumble in the battle for the first place, and I think the Rams have a coach and a defense and an offense that can do similar things that the Lions just did to the Vikings and kind of exposed them a little bit. So I do think the Rams can upset this. I think this is the closest. Is over-under correct? Is that what I'm thinking of? The closest spread? I think that's what I'm
Spread.
The closest spread. Over-under's not right. Closest spread of all of the games. I think this is. I think I heard the Vikings were supposed to win by 2, which is real close for a home team that is 14-3. But I do think the Rams can pull this one off.
Yeah, I've also got the Rams. So we went 6 for 6 here. Phil, what does your AFC matchup looks like? You got the Chargers, Ravens, Bills, and obviously the Chiefs moving on to the divisional round. Who is your AFC matchup, and who you got winning and going to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I could see both AFC games going either way. I think that's going to be really intense, terrifying football in both those matchups. I think the Bills can exercise their Ravens demons and take that. As long as Josh keeps playing like Josh can play, they have a shot in every single game. I really want to pick the Chargers. I do. But until the Chiefs get knocked off of their stupid pedestal, I mean, the Chargers should have beat them already this year. I think they have the team to beat them, but the Chiefs are just the Chiefs in playoffs, and they're really annoying. But I guess we'll go Bills-Chiefs for a fun AFC matchup, and we'll take that.
That is also my AFC matchup. I think that is
it's what the NFL wants.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's what the NFL wants. I think that's what a lot of NFL fans want. I think Buffalo really wants it to avenge that 13-second loss, because I don't think there's a way to forget it unless you really just face those demons. Yes, exactly. You put it perfectly. So NFC matchup, we both had the Eagles, Commanders, Rams, and obviously the Detroit Lions. Moving on to the divisional round, Phil, what does your NFC matchup look like?
It would be Lions and Commanders?
Lions and Commanders would be it, yes.
Eagles, Rams. The Lions worry me a little bit. They're really, really good, but they're really, really, really injured. I do think the Eagles can fly right into the finals there, but the Lions, I don't know. They are really, really good and coached really well, but they're injured. I do see them beating the Rams. I don't know if the Lions have enough to beat the Eagles with their current injuries. I know their team's good. I think they could do it, but I'm going to give it to the Eagles.
So you have the Eagles and Lions making your NFC matchup.
Yes.
Who you got as your Super Bowl matchup and your Super Bowl winner?
Bills versus the Eagles. And I've seen the meme go around a million times, but I haven't actually looked into if it was like fan made. But apparently the Simpsons picked the Bills. So we'll go with the Simpsons and the Bills. Oh my God. It's so scary picking them as a Super Bowl winner, even if it's just on this little podcast and means absolutely nothing. It's scary to look at. I don't know if I like it, but I'm going to go with the Bills.
So this is where we're going to differ. I am going chalk in the NFC. I had Lions versus Eagles as well in the NFC matchup. But I got Bills versus Lions in the Super Bowl. And I'm going to hide under my desk, but I just think this is the Lions' year. Their offense is just... I understand that the Bills already beat the Lions once this year, and it wasn't close until near the end, where a very close onside kick almost went the wrong way. But I just think it's all broken down. I saw something, I think it was TikTok or something, where they were talking about the Dan Campbell era, and they started like 0-10, and they were 0-10-1 at one point, and then they started winning, and then last year they won their first playoff game, and so on and so forth. And I think I think the Lions right now are the team of destiny that is just, and this is coming from a Bills fan and somebody that covers the team as much as they do, but I just think with getting David Montgomery back, that I think that's massive for them, getting that extra week rest for as injured as they are going through the playoffs. As long as they don't pick up any major injuries, I honestly think it's Detroit's playoffs to lose, and that's weird because Kansas City's won the last two. But yeah, I got Bills versus Lions, and I got Lions taking the title from the Bills and kind of making everybody say, oh, 5 times now, and you can't win it. I think that's going to be a thing after this Super Bowl. But
I think the thing with the Bills and this year, I mean, is what we talked about at the beginning of the season, is that they play really well as the underdog.
Oh, yeah.
And the issue is if they don't win it this year, next year, with whatever moves they make in the offseason, the money they have, anyone they bring in, they're going to be, right, their projection's going to be expected to be that much higher. It's going to be, like this year, realistically, going into the year, I know you can say Super Bowl or bust, but I don't think that's where they were. Like, mentally, everybody was talking down about this team, not even just outside of Buffalo, but in Buffalo. And even the coaching staff. And Bean was like, listen, this is a rebuild year. We understand we got to get the cap space back under control. We're not going out there and spending big on all these free agents. Like, we can't do that this year. This is a get the cap right, reset, and figure things out from there after losing all of your talent. Now they're, had an incredible season all the way up to now. So next year, when things are reset and they bring some people in after having this miracle year that looks amazing, once the pressure's back on them and they're expected to be amazing, that seems to be when they're just fall apart a little bit. So I think this year, with a chip on their shoulder, that kind of underdog attitude might be able to project them all the way to the Super Bowl.
I do agree with that. If they do not win it this year, all that pressure goes put right back on them, regardless of what they do in the playoffs here. Even if they're one and done, all the cap space and
they're
the season
bringing
they
somebody
had and
in.
the moves they make, it's going to be the only thing that would keep them down is if Joe Brady does get hired somewhere else and they bring in a new offensive coordinator. That would shake it up a little bit, but I still think going into next year, they're going to be the favorite to win the AFC. They're going to be one of the favorites to win the AFC, or the AFC East, I should say. They're going to be the favorites to win, one of the favorites to win the AFC going to the Super Bowl. So yeah, it's if they need to win without pressure, it's this year or bust. So we'll break down this Bills versus Broncos game on the Monday show. Next up, Sabres. We have a victory to talk about. Monday won 4-3 in a shootout over Washington. Tuck scored 2. Tage had the other. I believe it was one of the hardest shots in the NHL this year. UPL 25 of 28 saves. Shots were 28-27 in favor of Washington. 1 for 3 on the power play. They're sitting 15-21-5 for 35 points. They're still last in the East. They are somehow only 7 points out, but they've played the most games in the wild card race besides Pittsburgh, and they need to jump 8 teams. Phil, if they would have went 3-10 and 1, or 3-9 and 1 in that 13-game losing streak they had, they would be 1 point out of a playoff race right now. If they won 3 of those 13 games, they could have lost 9 of those 13 games. If they would have just won 3, they would have been in the race right now. It's stupid. Every single year, they do these one big loss, and I know exactly what's going to be happening. They're going to slowly move up the standings here. They're going to get close enough, and then all the pressure is going to be put back on them, and they're going to crumble again. This is a weak, mentally inadequate team. They cannot win when there's pressure on them. And I know we just talked about the Bills. They play their best when they're the underdogs. This team doesn't even play best when they're underdog. This team, it's so frustrating because I can see the story in my head. They're going to go on a nice little run from January until March. They're going to slowly get themselves within like 3 to 4 points. They're going to slowly jump a few teams here. They're going to start getting talked about around town again about, hey, you're only a few points out here. Win-win here, 1 loss by this team here. They're right back in, and they're going to crumble and bottom out again. That's what happens every single season, and I hate that I'm frustrated over a win here, but we didn't check anything off our bingo board again, and that's getting a little frustrating.
I was going to ask on a bingo board update.
Nothing.
And my other question for our YouTube viewers is your shirt baseball?
It's baseball.
Okay.
It's baseball. Not hockey.
So Sabres colors, but it's a baseball shirt.
It's baseball shirt.
Okay.
Might be hockey-themed baseball shirt, but it's baseball shirt. I'm hoping for warm weather because I worked outside all day my first day back at work on Monday, and it's very cold, and I think today is the coldest tonight, or when we're recording today on Wednesday was the coldest day of the week, and I am ready for spring and mud season, and I hate spring, but I hate winter right now because, my neck hurts right now, and the cold weather is definitely not helping. But, Sabres, you still got to go on some kind of big streak here. Like, that's the only way.
They won 3 recently, and then they lost 3 right after winning 3. Yep. So you got to go on a streak that is just winning for a while. You can't just win 3 and then lose 3. That doesn't really help you with anything.
It's just insane because I hadn't looked at the standings in a long time.
Yeah, I saw that in your notes. I was like, let's not talk about them being 7 points out of a playoff spot.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, I couldn't believe it was only 7. Like,
right.
I understand that gap there, but you got to jump the 8 teams. But to lose 13 straight games and only be 7 points out, like...
And before the 13 games, it's not like they were cruising and they were doing great and then
they were in a playoff spot.
Right. But it wasn't like they were, 9-10 games over 500 where you're like, they have the ability to lose 13 and still be 7 points out. Like, to lose 13 when you're already weren't doing great and then lose 13 and still only be 7 points out, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, currently the second wild card spot, the pace is 84.
Yikes.
I believe they had 85 points last year. Like, they would have been in the playoffs last year. Like, the East is just saying, here, somebody take it. Anybody take it.
It's the COVID season all over again where 24 teams made it, and they were 25, I believe.
But, that's enough Sabres talk for...
Yep.
Actually, I think it was 26, by the way. I think it was 26 teams made, and they were 27. But that's besides the whole league. Let's move on before we get into our preview of Bandits versus Rock for our first sponsor of the show, Tap That Tap Room.
Tap That Tap Room's at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar featuring 30 consistently rotating taps, including a wide variety of beers, ciders, sours, seltzers, and malt beverages.
Thursday, which is the time you're listening to this, unless you're listening Friday, then you missed it. Thursday is 50-cent boneless wing night. All night long. They got 10 sauce flavors. They got dry rubs. You can try as many as you want for just 50 cents each. It's crazy deal. And they will have the Sabres game on TV with the sound on. Friday, 3 to 7 is happy hour. The whole wall will be discounted. Then might as well camp out from 3 to 7, drink those drinks at discounted rates, and then stay, if you don't have tickets, for the Bandits game. All the TVs on will have the game on, and the sound will be on, and tickets will be given away to future games. No better place in the world. I can safely say the world. I have not traveled the whole world, but I can safely say there's no better place in the entire world to watch a Buffalo Bandits game than Tap That Tap Room.
Have you not heard of the Buffalo Bandits Italian club?
I have not, but they can't hold a candle to Tap That Tap Room and their watch parties. So definitely, if you do not have tickets to the game, but you want to watch it with a bunch of other Bandits fans and you want the sound on, go to Tap That Tap Room. And then Sunday, keep the party going. Come back, 1 o'clock, Bills watch party. Who knows? Could be the last one of the season. Hopefully not, but it could be. Sound's going to be on for that one as well, and jersey giveaways. So make sure you head down to Tap That Tap Room for this weekend, because they got jam-packed activities and giveaways all weekend long. For any other posted event, check out their Facebook page. And to find out what's on tap and what's on deck, check out tapthattaproom.com, because they have something for everyone. Phil, the 3-0 Bandits take on the 0-4 Rock. The only undefeated team faces the only winless team left in the league. Buffalo coming in 5-3 in the regular season the last 3 years versus the Rock. But Phil, they're 6-0 in the playoffs the last 3 years. Something happens, something's triggered in the Bandits when they face the Rock, because it happens every year at this pace. It's not happening this year, though. Last year, they won 16-14 late January in Toronto. Buffalo led 8-4 at halftime. Then Toronto kind of took over the third, led 10-9. Buffalo would score 7 straight in the fourth to take that 16-10 lead, and then everybody would freak out because Toronto would score 4 in under 2 minutes, but it didn't matter. Buffalo walked out victorious. Then, middle of March, I believe this was the St. Patrick's Day game. 14-12 victory. Toronto led 9-8 or 9-6 at half. Buffalo would outscore them 8-3 in the second half, including closing out the game, scoring 4 to take the win. Round 2, game 1, 12-4, 5-0 at half. Toronto would score just 2 goals in the final 5 minutes. Just an absolute rout. And then round 2, game 2 in Buffalo, 10-8 victory, 6-3 Toronto halftime lead. 7-4 Toronto after 3. It was 8-4 Toronto with just 13 minutes left, and then the old Bandits score 6 straight to take the victory. And I kind of wanted to look at what the stats looked like last year, because Toronto does look different. Buffalo brought most of their team back, but some of their pieces look different. But what really got me going was, it always seems like Nick Weiss has a massive game, both defensively and offensively, versus the Toronto Rock. I didn't know what it was. I didn't have the stats to back it up, so I went and looked. And, I have the numbers for a lot of players, but Weiss is the one that stands out. 1 goal, 10 assists, 11 points, 24 loose balls, and 6 caused turnovers in the 4 games last year versus the Toronto Rock. Something happens with Nick Weiss when he faces the Toronto Rock, and he might still have some bad blood versus that team that cut him open right before he was getting married. So if I were to put money on anything, I think Nick Weiss is going to have a massive game on Friday night.
Yeah, and then Priolo and Wires with the caused turnovers as well against this team, and the loose balls. I mean, those 3, as you highlighted on defense, really, really good against Toronto. Priolo starting his season a little slow. Nothing crazy or anything, but a little slow in a few of the stat categories, so maybe he's a player that could pick it up in this game. This game honestly scares me for a weird reason. This is a game where, as long as Buffalo plays like they have been to start the season, I'm not worried at all. If they keep that up, obviously their goal differential is ridiculous through 3 games, so keep that up and there's nothing to worry about. But the Rock are a team that is very, very desperate to win. They absolutely need to, and at this point, they honestly have nothing to lose. I mean, it's not even protecting any. Like, they are a team that is probably going to be a little unhinged They need a win in the worst way, and to do it against your number one rival would be massive. To knock the Bandits off their undefeated streak and kind of knock them off their high horse would probably mean a lot to Toronto. So this game, as long as Buffalo plays like we know they can and they have to start the season, they'll be fine. But Toronto is a team that is just going to be playing pure desperation, all-out lacrosse, because if they lose this one, start the season 0-5, and you just lost to Buffalo, it's going to be bad for them, real bad. But if they can get to 1-4 and knock off the number one team in the entire league, I think they can possibly switch their fortunes around a little bit and people start believing them again. But if they get demolished by Buffalo, their season's going to be in a lot of trouble with even more questions than they already have going into this game. So just what worries me about them is just their pure desperation in a game that's already only the fifth game of the season, but one that they need very badly to stay in any contention for playoffs.
Yeah, and like you said, they're the team that's going to be the most hungry to give Buffalo their first loss, because nothing would feel better for them. If they get to 1-4, I'm not saying their season is saved, but you fall to 0-5, you're pretty much DONE. Like, there's very little hope for you to make any kind of run, especially with how competitive this league has been this year. Something new that we're going to be adding here is kind of taking a look at what the injuries look like. And yes, both teams haven't played in 2 weeks, so take these with a grain of salt. But 2 weeks ago, going into the game, Spanger and Wires were both questionable. They both did play, but it is worth noting that both of them were questionable. Cloutier was doubtful. He ended up going to the IR, and you called up Clay Scanlon. So those are names to keep an eye on. There might be more that are added. We always take that, blurb of the injury report and put it on wherever we can to make sure that everybody that's going to the game, or anybody that watches the game, or anybody that's a fan of the Buffalo Bandits knows what the injury department looks like. For Toronto, Schreiber, Harris, and Erlin were all out 2 weeks ago. That does not mean that they can't be improved to doubtful or questionable and possibly play, but 2 weeks ago they were officially listed as out. Chris Corbeil was listed as questionable, but before that game he was moved to the active roster from the IR, so I would bet that he's probably going to be playing in this one. But the big move happened Wednesday before we started recording. Jalen Rogers is back in the lineup, which is a huge, massive addition to that team. He has not played all year long. He's been vastly and very much missed in that transition role, but especially up on top where this team, which we're going to in a second, just can't score any goals. But with that news, Mark Matthews, who was listed as questionable last time they played, but did play, he moved to the IR, so he is officially out on Friday night. So you add back in Jalen Rogers, Mark Matthews is out. This team is, like you mentioned, I think the best word is desperate for this team, but some injuries to keep an eye on and some injuries to keep a note on. And, will Chris Cloutier be activated before the game? You'll know before the game. We'll try to put it out there as soon as we find out any information. It's likely, because he was just listed as doubtful instead of out, that maybe this week off, they try to use a full 2 weeks to get him back healthy beforehand. Actually, it was more like 3 weeks, because they hadn't played before the banner raising. So he's got 3 full weeks of no games in lacrosse. Maybe they use that extra buffer game and that bye week to get him fully back healthy. But he is one of the bigger names to keep an eye on if he is back in the lineup on Friday night.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing right now with Toronto. Not only are their star players not stepping up when they need to, they have a ridiculous amount of injuries. And because it's Toronto, I don't feel bad. But they are going through a heck of a lot. They're missing all their top players pretty much. It's not even just the depth players that are the ones who are injured, where it's like, oh yeah, they have 6 guys out, but it's not any of their stars. It's their stars as well. So they're going through it for sure. But again, it's Toronto, so I don't feel too bad about that. But yeah, I mean, like you said, every single time it seems that they add somebody back into the lineup, they are losing someone with that same transaction. So we'll kind of see how the injury report ends up shaking out toward the as it gets a little closer here. But a lot of injury news could switch this way one way or the other. So we'll have to see who's in, who's out for both teams.
Yeah, so we'll go over some stats now. Buffalo's coming in first in the league in goals for at 15.33. Toronto is dead last, 7.25 a game. Goals against Buffalo. First, 6.67 allowed. Toronto is down at 9th. Very unusual to see them that low at 12 a game. Power play, though. They're very similar. Buffalo is tied for 12th. We kind of went over this the last show on our resolutions. They're 5 for 15. Small sample size, but 33%. Toronto, small sample size, they're 11th, 6 for 16 at 38%. But flip that to the penalty kill. Both teams are very solid on the penalty kill. Buffalo's 10 for 14 on killing off penalties. 72%, first in the league. Toronto's 5th, 11 for 19, which is 58%. So I truly believe that Buffalo's got to stay out of the box and capitalize on those power plays because Toronto is going to be very hungry. You might see a different Toronto team than you have all year long because of how desperate they are and how much a matchup like this can get you up for a game.
And this is the kind of game that is tough for Buffalo because they don't seem to do very well in it, but this is the kind of game with a very desperate Toronto that you have to let them be the pest. Do not, settle down. Don't take stupid penalties. Don't, meet their level. They're probably going to do everything they can to get under your skin. They are desperate for a win. They're going to be chippy. They're going to be fighting you. They're going to be hitting you. Do not stoop to that level. Just let them hit you. Let the refs do what they got to do. Take the penalties. Accept the penalties. Let them be the aggressive team. Don't take any stupid penalties in this kind of game. They're going to do their best to get under your skin. Because it's a very heated rivalry game, because it's a very desperate Toronto, they're going to be, I would assume, playing pretty nasty. And so it's up to Buffalo to not stoop to that level and do their best to stay out of the box.
Yeah, and like my dad always said growing up, they're going to catch the second man. And Toronto's always going to be the one that is going to give that extra shot right after the whistle. You can't respond because if you do, they're going to catch you going right to the box, and that could hurt you. Especially with a 0-4 team, you give them that many opportunities on the power play, and no matter how good you are in the penalty kill, that is going to keep them hanging around. And you can't let a little pest like this that is the underdog coming into your house have them hang around as long as they possibly could. But we'll go over the players now. A lot of these names on the forward department are going to look different than in past years. This is their fourth year covering the team. This is the most different I have seen this forward group, which is weird because going into the season I said they didn't do anything in the forward group, and this forward group looks completely different because of the injuries. But lefties, Brian Cameron, 3 games played so far, 5 points. Dan Craig has been very quiet through 4 games, just 4 points, 2-2-4. Getting a lot of loose balls, but he is not shooting the ball very well. Mark Matthews is already on the IR, so we do not have to worry about them. Or him, he is not playing. And then Corey Small, another one that's coming up very small. See what I did there? 2-2-4 on the season for the righties. Chris Bushi, shooting a lot. He's leading the team in shots with 42, 7-4-11, 19 loose balls. Josh Dowick, he is 9-5-14, actually leading the team in points right now. Young Aaron Woods, who is not really young. He was a rookie last year, but I think he was like 29 last year playing for Halifax. He's over here with the righties. 2 games played, just 1 point. And then, like I mentioned, Tom Schreiber currently on the IR. Played in 1 game, 1 assist in the first game, got hurt. Who knows? I can't see him playing in this one, but he did have an extra week rest after being listed out. So and even if you want to add in Jalen Rogers, he's probably going to have to play a lot of righty forward. He's down in the transition category right now for names. He hasn't played all year, but I can see him playing a lot of forward for this group just because of how injured they are on the front end and the back end. But this forward group has struggled so much. None of their star players have really stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, Corey Small last year led their team with 38 goals, and if my math is accurate, he's on pace for 9-ish, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's not good. And even, I don't know, even like you said, Chris Bushi, another one, 31 goals last year. Mark Matthews, 31 goals. They're all way off pace from what they need to be. And they're just, I mean, Corey Small is a huge one. He led their team last year in goals by a lot. Like, it wasn't that close. 7 goals is a lot to lead a team by. Having 2 and being on pace for less than 10 is kind of a joke. And he's what needs to be their star on their left side. He's the player that led their left side last year. And Matthews, even last year, yes, he played pretty well, but it was more, he's an assist guy more than he ever was a goal scorer. And yes, great, and he's on pace for as well under way under 10. But Small needs to step up, and he's just hasn't been able to do it yet. Chris Boucher at least has 7. Like you said, DeWick at least has 9. Not great for either of those players, but it's better than the two, and their left side is just horrible right now. I mean, to have combined over, was that 69 goals last year between Mark Matthews and Corey Small all season, and this year they have 3 in 4 games combined. They're averaging less than 1 a game on your left side. Like, that's just inexcusable, honestly, and it kind of continued from playoffs for Mark Matthews, where he just completely disappeared. And I mean, I know we're picking on him a lot, but he was their massive acquisition last year to push themselves past the Bandits, to push them over the edge, and he has completely disappeared. And then Small's the same way. I mean, yes, Small's getting up there in age, but last year he showed no signs of slowing down. This year he's shown a lot of them, and we see in the NFL all the time where players just have that, that year, that off year where it's just finally their age hits them all of a sudden. It's just kind of like a wall. And not saying Corey Small can't pick it up over time if, their team gets healthy and they get some more righties in there, like a Schreiber, to kind of balance things out. Maybe it takes the pressure off of Small, but right now, Small, he's honestly, for me, the issue on this offense, and Mark Matthews, just that whole left side is struggling way too much. And when they're struggling, the defense can focus all of their attention on Boucher and DeWick and not really worry about the left side because they're not scoring anyway. So it just closes what the defense needs to focus on that much more and makes it that much tougher on your offense, because the few people that are productive are now being clamped down by the defense, and they're leaving the unproductive players alone because they don't need to worry about them. And obviously that hurts the offense as a whole.
Yeah, definitely not having Tom Schreiber and Mark Matthews out there is going to make this job of defending this group a heck of a lot easier. And that's
Especially
no shot at the players that are still out there. But, when you take a Tom Schreiber and a Mark Matthews off the lineup, as much as they've been struggling, it's going to change how you have to defend this team. But, yeah, it's their forward group is the reason why I have kind of laughed at a lot of people saying, like, hey, they're just so hurt. That's the reason they're struggling. And early on in the year, I was like, it's really, like, their forward group is fine. Like, when they scored, 4 or 5 goals versus Ottawa in Game 1, and everybody's saying it's because they're hurt, I was like, you don't score 5 goals when your entire offense, that is the offense that's supposed to be there, scores 5 goals. Like, their offense is not the reason that they're sitting 0-4, or their offense is the reason they're sitting 0-4. It's not because of the injuries. The injuries do not help whatsoever. And now that Mark Matthews is added to Tom Schreiber, you can start using the forward group as an excuse. But it's the lack of production from the Corey Smalls and the Dan Craigs. They just have not stepped up in place of the Tom Schreiber being out. It's just they have underperformed nonstop. And this is what we were saying in the offseason of, hey, if you're going to run it back, you have to prove us wrong, because it's just doing the same thing over and over, and it's expecting different results. It's the definition of insanity. We said that this team was probably going to take a step back. I don't think anybody thought they were going to take a step back to being 0-4 at this point, but we knew that they were going to take a step back because everybody else got better. We did not think that they got better. And, their offense is just, it's putrid right now. And you cannot give this team whatsoever any type of life. If you let them come out and score 3 or 4 goals in the first quarter, that could come out and unravel. And Corey Small has burned this team in the past. You cannot let him get hot. You have to keep them down in the dumps. Once they get shut out in the first quarter, or they score 1 or 2 goals in the whole first half, you're going to demoralize this team. And that's when they're going to start doing some dirty stuff. That's when they're going to start taking some hits after the whistle. And you have to let them do that. You cannot let this team get hot. You can't let this offense, who has been absolutely putrid all season, start getting hot versus you, because then it can all come unraveled. Transition to defense, though, a lot of these names are going to look very familiar, but they've kind of struggled on defense and net as well. Mitch DeSnoo's still sitting out there. Chris Corbeil's still sitting out there. Elijah Gash, who I was really high on, he's been pretty decent on this team, but I don't think he is the same type of player as like a Latrell Harris, who I think he needs to step into that role, because Latrell Harris went down after 1 game. Tyler Hendricks is back there, only playing in 2 games. Billy Hostrauser, after last year, he was one of the best cause turnover machines in the entire league. He's got 1 on the year right now. He's got no points right now, which he's never been a big point getter, but he's always been a big block shot and a cause turnover machine. No block shots, 1 cause turnover. He's been very, very quiet. Brad Cree missed the first 2 games because of work obligations. 2 games played so far, 15 loose balls, just 1 caused turnover. Justin Martin, He was that high flying rookie last year who was getting in the transition game. No goals, 1 assist. Phil Mazuka right now is the leader in the pack with 1, 2, and 3. But it's very quiet, and it's a very unusual Toronto defense that is so known to block those shots and cause those turnovers. And besides Mitch DeSnew, it's been very, very quiet back there. It has not been the same rough and tumble lockdown defense that we have seen for years and years and years. That has been the peak top tier of the league.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mitch DeSnew is still playing at a very, very high level, but that's the problem. He's it.
Yep.
Everyone else is struggling so far. And like you said, last year when you run down this team, the caused turnovers headed into playoffs where you're going down what Toronto did in the season, because we were doing a full season breakdown. Their caused turnovers across the board. Everyone had, 25, 25, 23. They were just all at the top of pretty much the entire league, let alone one team. And it wasn't just one or two guys. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players where their whole entire defense had caused turnovers and block shots and loose balls galore. And this year, it's one guy who's been at the top of his game forever. And then the rest of the team, the drop-off is just a lot bigger this year than it was last year, where everybody was doing pretty close to the same thing, but DeSnew was still at an elite level, but everyone else was near him. And this year, it's DeSnew, and then there's a pretty big drop-off for the rest of their defense. And they still have the names, like you said. They still have the players, still have the names, still the same team. They just are not performing at the level they were last year. And of all years, with all the injuries, this is the year they needed at least repeat performances from last year. And if anything, all the players, for the most part, other than DeSnew, are taking steps back, and this is not the time they needed that.
Yeah, like you were mentioning with the caused turnovers, Mitch DeSnew had 38, Cree had 36, Hostrauser, like I mentioned, had 25, Justin Martin had 20, Chandler Rogers, who is coming back, had 14, Chris Wire 14, Mazuka 12. So I mean, it was, and even with block shots right now, Brad Cree had 17, Mitch DeSnew had 16, Justin Martin had 13. It's not the same. Like, this team is very, very broken right now, and that's what could be very dangerous for this team. And that's what we said, and you said right off the get-go, is this could be a very dangerous team to have to face because of how desperate they are. But for the face-off, man, it's really Josh Jubinville right now is winning 22% because TD Erlin is still out, and that's one to keep an eye on because they said he was going to be missing a few more weeks. That was a few weeks ago, so keep an eye on what his health status is. I can't imagine he's going to go right from out to back in, but he did have that extra week of rest. But Connor Farrell is probably going to be going against Josh Jubinville in this game. In net, Nick Rose, he has not been the same either. 0-4, 11.67 goals against average, and a 76 save percentage. It's a little bit more difficult back there, Nick Rose, when you don't have an elite defense in front of him. That's not knocking him whatsoever, but some of his stats might have been a tad inflated because of how good the defense was in front of him. And we said that, and multiple people have said that. The defense in front of you definitely helps. But when the defense in front of you is not performing to its top peer status that it normally has, Nick Rose has struggled a bit this year. And, Buffalo has been known to have Nick Rose's number, especially in the playoffs. If you can beat him early, you can shake his confidence, and we have seen it in the past.
And even this year, nobody has shot more than 50 shots on Toronto. The highest is 48, then 46, 45, and 38. So he's being asked to do enough, but he's not being asked to do anything. I mean, Matt Vince just had 62 saves in one game, and that takes, it looks like, Nick Rose to get 2 games to get to that same save level. I know it was a franchise record and personal record, so it's not something Vince is doing every single time, but he's still not being asked to do a ton. I still think Nick Rose is an incredible goalie. He was just a goaltender of the year last year with ridiculous numbers. He's fine. He's still a really, really good goalie, but like you said, the team in front of him is a little bit different, which makes it a little bit tougher on him. And he might be starting this season how we saw Vince starting last season, where he just wasn't making those elite type of saves that you expect him to make because he's an elite goalie. He might not be making those big breakaway saves, those 2-on-1 saves that you're used to him making. He's not making those saves coming up in those clutch situations, and that puts the team at a disadvantage. And like you said, I mean, scrolling up through the notes here, and I scrolled past it, they are 12th in the league out of 14 teams, or 9th in the league for goals against with 12 per game. That's just an unheard of number for Toronto. Anytime they're allowing more than 10 is, on average, is pretty ridiculous for them. So for them to be all the way up at 12 goals per game That's pretty much unheard of for a Toronto team and a Toronto defense. So you can tell this entire team is struggling, which, again, all this sounds pretty much everything negative we're saying about Toronto. And the way Buffalo is playing makes it sound like it should be a cakewalk of a game as long as Buffalo comes out, plays how they have been playing. Toronto comes out and plays the way they've been playing through the first 4 games. It should be a pretty easy breezy win. But we know this is a huge rivalry. These teams have seen each other a ton of times. And again, this team is beyond desperate for a win. And they would love the chance to knock Buffalo off their pedestal of being by far the number 1 team in the league. If Buffalo loses this game, they will have some questions to answer because this is a Toronto team that you should, if you're the number 1 team in the league, walk all over. So if you don't and you lose this one and Toronto gets what they want, then you're going to have some quick questions, even though they'll be 3-1 and they'll be fine. But this is a game that Buffalo should easily win, but that's the game that is kind of dangerous against such a desperate Toronto team. So on paper, again, it looks stats across the board looks like it should be an easy breezy win, but those are the kind of games that sometimes are the ones that turn the worst.
Yeah, 2 things real quick. Just for reference, last year for 18 games, their goals against average was 9.39. That's the typical Toronto Rock, and that's what we mean by saying 12 goals a game is just unheard of for this team. But the second one is, if you did mention it, if they do end up losing on Friday, this would seem a lot like last year where they went to Vancouver and dropped a game they probably should not have lost. It would seem like that type of game where it's not the world is ending and everything's crumbling down, but it is, okay, how the heck did you lose against a team like this that you're supposed to be the top tier team? How do you drop a game like that? That's why you got to come out early and put them away early, because you cannot let a team like Toronto, who is struggling so much, gain any type of momentum and say, hey, we can be the giant killer here. You have to put them down and make them believe, okay, they're about to be 0-5. Maybe Jamie Dowick is going to start looking to sell some pieces and have the number 1 and 2 picks in this coming draft, because they do have Las Vegas's first overall pick, and Las Vegas is struggling right now 1-4. If you're sitting there right now at 0-5, wouldn't that more entice you to start selling off some of these pieces to get worse so you get better in the long run? So, a lot of implications could be happening if Toronto does drop to 0-5. That's why it's so important to get out to an early lead. And we say that almost every show, but it's definitely important against a team like Toronto, who's struggling so much, who's going to come in very angry and very hungry for their first win. Because if you can get to 1-4, you're giving yourself a shot. But if you fall to 0-5, your season's pretty much wrapped up. But Phil, predictions for this show and predictions for this game right now. We're both 3-3 predicting them to win. We have not nailed a prediction yet. Phil, is it going to be another blowout, or are we in for a nail biter?
No, I mean, with everything we said, and Rodgers coming back, yes, but it's his first game back, so who knows how strong he'll be. And like you just said, losing Matthews and Schreiber for a defense like Buffalo has right now, only allowing less than 7 goals a game against a already struggling offense that now, in theory, should struggle even more after missing those pieces. I have this game going 13-6. I think the defense keeps on rolling. I think the offense keeps on rolling, but takes a mild step back with, I think, would be their lowest goal output so far this season. But I think the defense is going to be way too much for Toronto's lack of an offense. Vince is playing way, way, way too well right now. If the defense and Vince keep that up, I really don't see Toronto getting more than 6 goals in this game, considering against stronger, healthy offenses, Buffalo has been able to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, for pretty much the same reasons. I got them winning 14-7.
Very close.
I just can't see their offense being any type of threat unless you let a Corey Smaller or Dan Craig kind of get going on the left-hand side. If you can shut down the lefties, let the righties do the minimum work they're going to do. It's just that this defense and Matt Vince are just playing too elite for them to give up double-digit goals to a team like this, and I don't think there's any way that you're not putting at least 10 behind Nick Rose. So if you can get to 10, I think this game's wrapped up. I think it's a race to 10 for Buffalo. If you can get to 10, which I don't see how you can't get to 10, it's pretty much a wrapped-up game. But we've said that in the past. So, Phil, we'll move on to Where is the graphic? I made one. There it is. Fastest milestone minute in the land. That will pop up even better once I get the TV going. All these possible milestones, which there's not very many, can be found on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. We post them to lead up to each game. So if you miss one and you don't want to listen back, which this one's going to be very quick, you can check for them all there. We only have 4. Thank you. Last game, banner raising night, you knocked off a ton. Clear my throat, and away we go. If Paul Dawson plays on Friday, we'll tie Sean Evans for 7th place in NLL history in games played with 270. Chris Cloutier is 2 points away from tying Troy Cordingley for 9th place in Buffalo Bandits history. He averages 3.5 points a game in his Bandits career. Justin Martin is 1 cause turnover away from tying Alex Hill for 8th place in Buffalo Bandits history. He averages .53 a game, and Chris Cloutier is 2 loose balls away from 300 for his career. He averages 4.14 a game.
Very quick. I'm waiting for, I don't think it'll ever happen, but if there's ever a game where you have one and you like have this huge long build up to it, it just one sentence. All right, that was it. That may be literally your fastest milestone minute ever. I think that's the least amount of milestones you may have ever had to announce. I know your playoff ones, they take literally about a full 60 seconds to get through those.
Yeah, this one was definitely very, very quick. I kept looking. I'm like, there's no way it's only 4, but yeah, it's definitely only 4. So only 4. It could be 2 if Chris Cloutier doesn't get activated off the IR. So yeah, we'll find out. But real quick, we're at the hour mark, so we get the NL Outlook. 2-2 Ottawa heads to the 4-1 Georgia Swarm, fresh off their first loss of the season. Friday at 7:30, same time at the Bandits are going to be playing, so you're going to have to watch that one on replay. 3-2 San Diego heads to the 2-1 Vancouver Warriors, Friday 10 p.m. If you can get out of KeyBank Center early, you can catch most of that game. 2-1 Calgary Roughnecks head to the hot 3-1 Philadelphia Wings, afternoon lacrosse, 1 o'clock on Saturday. 1-3 Halifax Thunderbirds take on the 2-4 Rochester Nighthawks. Both teams needing a win. Saturday 7 p.m. 1-4 Las Vegas Desert Dogs head to the 3-1 Saskatchewan Rush. Saturday at 8 p.m. and then the 1-4 Albany Firewolves. Man, would you have guessed they're 1-4 at the start of the season versus the 3-2 Colorado Mammoths Saturday at 9 p.m.
Yeah, I'll make it super quick because we're running along. Ottawa, Georgia. We want Ottawa, Georgia. I think will rebound. You and Pat disagree with me. San Diego, Vancouver. I think that'll be a really close one. Calgary and Philly. That's an interesting teams that should be at the bottom that are being successful. So that'll be just an interesting battle. Teams that should be successful that are at the bottom, other than Halifax and Rochester. That's a desperation game for both of those teams. Las Vegas and the Rush. The Rush should be able to handle business there. And then Albany and Colorado. This is another situation where I know they're overtime losses. You can say whatever you want. Albany's losing games. Whether they're overtime or not, you're losing games that you need to win. And now going up against a very tough Colorado team in the West, in Colorado. If they drop to 1-5, I'm not saying that they won't make playoffs, not saying that they're out of it completely, but they're in a eerily similar situation to Toronto, who might be 0-5. I mean, 1-5 is not that far off from that. And that's going to be a not good place to be for an Albany team that, I mean, somebody even mentioned it. I think it was Lacrosse Classified I was listening to today, where Albany last year came in, no expectations. They took everybody by storm, made it all the way to the finals, and this was our concern with their team this year. I know they're overtime losses. You can say whatever you want. They're very close. You're still losing games. I mean, whether it's overtime or not, you lost. And it's a game that you should have won in regulation to make it not go to overtime. So I think the league may have figured them out a bit, and the expectations of them getting back to the finals, because that's what your new expectation is when you just did it, is weighing heavily on a young team. And I just don't think they're rising to the occasion. And this is a game where I think Colorado should overmatch them pretty handily, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in this game. If Albany can upset Colorado, I think that'll answer a lot of questions of what Albany is. If Colorado blows them out, the Albany's in trouble.
Yeah, I think you summed up Albany perfectly, so I don't even have to touch that one. Saskatchewan, you could put Vegas in your backseat rearview mirror. Their only loss came in overtime as well. You know, Rochester trying to get back to 3-4. I think they face Halifax back-to-back weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So they can get back to 500. Watch out. Rochester can get hot, and Hartley allegedly is on his way back. But yeah, this week with all 14 teams in action across these 7 games will tell and paint a bigger story across the NLL, and maybe give us more, especially for picking these games, a better outlook and a better understanding of what the league actually looks like, because right now it's very tough to pick these games, and yet all 3 of us are somehow picking the majority of the same games. It's crazy right now. But Ottawa, Georgia, San Diego, Vancouver, and Calgary, Philly, top teams facing top teams. It's a lot of things can shake out this weekend across the NLL. So that will wrap up this episode. Next episode coming out on Monday. Got Bills versus Broncos. See if the Sabres can get anything going and try to slowly move up the ladder. We got Bandits versus the Rock Friday night. Phil is going to be up in the box covering it for the BSC. We're going to be up there the rest of the season. One of us will be up in the box carrying the load for the team here. And then check for my power rankings, which will be coming out on Friday. If you want to take a sneak peek, they're probably going to be out Thursday night on BuffaloSportsCollective.com. But Phil's article will be out next Tuesday after the game wraps up. So that will wrap up this episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Thank you for listening to it. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at BuffaloSportsCollective.com, where you can find my article coming out on Friday. Check out our store on our link trees, on our social, or at the shop tab at the top of the website. Follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube. And make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.